All right, now I want you to get back to our Vidly project and build an API to manage the list of movies. Now, don't think that this is exactly like managing the list of genres. This exercise is more challenging. So I highly encourage you to spend 20 to 30 minutes and do this exercise. So this is the shape of the movies that we want to store in MongoDB. Every movie object should have a title, which is a string, a genre, and here we're embedding a genre document inside the movie. So note that we already have the genres collection here, but I have decided to embed a genre document inside a movie document to optimize the performance of our queries. So this is the hybrid approach I'm using, and also take into account that it's very unlikely that we will rename the name of a genre in the future. So sci-fi is sci-fi, thriller is thriller. So in this particular case, I'm not worried about our data becoming inconsistent in the future. Now, you might be curious why we still need the genres collection here, because somewhere in our application on the client side, we want to have a drop-down list for the user to select the genre for a movie. So we still want to have the list of genres in one place. Querying this collection is much easier than querying all the movies and then getting the unique list of genres. Okay? So back to our movie documents. We need two more properties here: number in stock and daily rental rate. Note that both these properties are numbers. So go ahead, do this exercise, and then come back, continue watching. So to save your time, I'm not going to type this solution by hand. I've completed the solution. You can download it as a zip file attached to this lecture. So I'm going to quickly review my code and highlight the key points that are important for you to understand. Let's start with our movie model. So here's our movie schema. We have the title property. It's a string. It's required. I also enabled trimming to get rid of any paddings around the title of the movie. Now I set the minimum length to 5 characters and maximum length to 255 characters because I don't want a malicious client to send a very long string that would potentially cause problems in our application. So that's our title property. Next, we have genre, and I've set the type of this genre to genre schema. So you can see on the top, I have created this constant genre schema, and I've loaded that from our genre module. This is something new that we didn't have before. So let's have a quick look there. Here's the genre module. So previously, we didn't have this genre schema. I had this expression, definition of this genre schema, right here when creating a genre model. But because we need to reference that in our movie module, I extracted that into a separate constant so we can reuse it in multiple places. And also, at the end of this module, I added this genre schema to our module.exports. So, back in the movie module. Next, we have number in stock property. It's a number. It's required. I set the minimum to 0 because I don't want to have a negative number here. Again, we want to have this kind of validation to make sure our application behaves properly. I also set a maximum of 255 characters because I don't want a malicious client to send a very large number that can potentially break our application. And the same is true for the last property, daily rental rate. So it's a required number between 0 and 255. Now here's the interesting part. Below the definition of this schema, we have our validate movie function. And this is where we define a joy schema, which is different from a mongoose schema. Now in this particular case, note that our joy schema has a property called genre ID, not genre, because I want the client to send only the ID of a genre. So this is a string and it's required. In contrast, in our mongoose schema, we have genre, which is a complex object. So you can see that in a real-world application, your mongoose schema can start to grow independent of your joy schema. What we have here as the joy schema is what the client sends us. So that's the input to our API. So there we want to get a genre ID. What we have here is the representation of our model in the application. That's our persistent model. That's what we're going to store as a document in MongoDB. So this is our movie module. Now let's take a look at our movies routes. So I want to overview only one of our routes here because the rest is exactly like before. I don't want to waste your time. So let's take a look at the route handler for creating a new movie. So here on the top, we're validating the object that we send in the request. If it's invalid, we return a 400 error, which is bad request, exactly like before. Now, after that, we have something new. We find this genre by ID, and if it doesn't exist, we return the 400 error with this message, invalid genre, because we want to make sure that the genre ID that the client sends represents a valid genre. Okay? Below that, this is how we create a movie object. So we set the title based on what we get in the request. But for genre, we set the value of this key to a complex object with two properties, underline ID and name. And I read both of these from the genre. Now you might ask why I didn't set this genre to this genre object that we load here on line 16. The reason I didn't do that is because this genre object also has a version property that is set by Mongo. I don't want to put that here. Also, in a more complex application, the object that we load here could have 50 properties. We don't want to store all those properties here when embedding that document inside this movie document. That's why I preferred to selectively set these properties here. And the rest is pretty self-explanatory.